What's up, y'all? Joe Rogan goes live, or goes viral, I should say, once again, talking about Jesus or the Big Bang, the Joe Biden media cover-up, the new Jake Tapper book. We have a thwarted terrorist attack that takes place in Michigan, and a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old kid with a gun are in a standoff with the police. Crazy stuff today. You're live with the Code Red Conversation Show with Eric Muldrow. Thank you for joining me. We're going to jump right in, y'all. So again, Joe Rogan recently posted this video, or during a conversation, he talked about the miracle of the Big Bang and the miracle of the resurrection. So let's just dive right on in, shall we?
Joe Rogan, the most influential podcaster on planet Earth, just made a pretty surprising argument for Jesus, and it's gone viral. Take a look.
Yes. And it's funny because people would be incredulous about the resurrection of Jesus Christ, but yet they're convinced that the entire universe was smaller than the head of a pin, and for no reason than anybody's adequately explained to me. Makes sense.
Yeah. No.
Instantaneously became everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't buy that.
I'm sticking with Jesus on that one.
Yeah.
Jesus makes more sense.
Billy, what do you think?
Okay, let me chime in right there. And we're going to go through this clip because they have a pretty cool interaction where they address where Joe Rogan has gone. And that's what I want to talk about just for a hot second. It's really interesting to see the journey that Joe Rogan has been on in recent years. Here you have a guy who not that long ago was very vocally mocking religion, in particularly Christianity. The idea of a man rising from the dead and walking on water. He was very openly mocking the Christian faith. But now, over the years, I think in light of conversations with people like Jordan Peterson, although he, as far as we know, he definitely hasn't come out and proclaimed a clear-cut biblical Christian faith, but he had logical arguments for the existence of God that I think were pretty influential on Joe. And even now you see Jordan being a little more open with making some form of proclamation, but he's still not 100% clear, unless there's been something out that I didn't see. And he recently had Wes Huff on, and it wasn't an adversarial argument. It was just an honest engagement where he just asked a lot of questions. So I said a few years ago, it might have been 2-3 years ago, where I said that in 5 years, Joe is going to make some profession of faith. Now, I don't know what, but he seems to be a man that's searching for answers. And he's really being challenged on the claims of evolution, something that many of the guys that have been on the show have been advocates of, people like Sam Harris over the years. He's had Richard Dawkins on throughout the years. And something's going on with Joe. I think those of us that are believers, we need to keep praying for the man.
Think about that comment.
I mean, the entire conversation that he had was fascinating. I think the comment itself is very telling because this is a guy who, as far as we understand, I believe he's described himself as at some points an atheist, at least agnostic, but yet he's having all these conversations about faith lately. And so to see somebody who you assume didn't believe actually make a comment about Jesus Christ and the resurrection being more believable than some of these other things like the Big Bang, that's a pretty incredible statement for somebody like him with the influence he has to be making.
And he's having a bunch of apologists on his show, like Wes Huff. And so, Joe, if you're watching this, let me recommend a few names. Not that I necessarily endorse every argument that they've ever made, but someone like a William Lane Craig, John Lennox, James Torr, Sean McDowell, Michael Icona.
Let me know what you think. William Lane Craig, he makes some good arguments as far as a cumulative case for God. He makes good arguments for the defense of the New Testament. He makes good arguments for reason and logic and things like that, but he really miffs it, I think, on his perspective on Genesis. he takes a lot of secular perspectives that I'm just not a fan of, that seem to stray very far away from the clear teaching of the Bible. And some of the guys he mentioned, I love John Lennox. I'm a fan. And I think he's been a gift to the church. And of course, like I said, not everybody you're going to agree with, but I think that there are other people Joe could have on. Now, I would personally love to see him have like a Jason Lyle, Dr. Jason Lyle, a Dr. Jonathan Sarfati. Those are the guys that I would love to see go on Joe Rogan, because I think they make a consistent biblical case for Genesis, for creation in general. They have a deep, rich scientific background. And I think for a guy like Joe, who's into the more intellectual side of things, I think those guys would be really cool. It would be a really cool breath of fresh air to see those guys on, just to have a nice, well thought out conversation on these issues.
Let's have them on your show, brother. Because here's my encouragement, my man. I'm a natural skeptic. And my path to having my doubts answered was more of the archaeology side of it, which I will get to in a second. But if your holdup is science, man, there's a lot of good stuff in there. This is a big book. This is not an endorsement, but just to have it. This book, Evidence That Demands a Verdict by Josh and Sean McDowell. If you're watching this and you're not even a believer by any means, this is a good place to start. It's kind of long, but it's some good stuff in there. And so my encouragement to my friend here who's watching is that I know, let me say it this way. It's all true. There really was a person named Jesus of Nazareth. He really did live in a very real place. He was born in Bethlehem. He really was crucified. All the names in the Bible, the goalpost for faith has been moved so much, where people used to say, oh, this is all fairy tales. You can't prove any of it. And then like every 5 seconds, they're finding something in the ground in Israel where it's like, so I guess Hezekiah was a real dude. King David, real guy. All these places, real. There's a YouTube channel, Billy, that I love called Expedition Bible, if you're really into archaeology. But we're talking about science. We're talking about the Big Bang. Billy, what would you say if you could talk to Joe right now when he's kind of on this precipice of seeing the validity of the Christian argument?
Let me ask you this. What was convincing for you, those of you who are watching that are believers? What convinced you that the Christian faith was real? For me personally, it was the inner testimony. That was one of the biggest aspects, the inner testimony of my heart, just a conviction of sin. That was a massive part for me. But then once I started digging deeper, it's funny that he brings up Josh McDowell, the very first apologetics book I ever bought when I was working at the prison in Westville Correctional Center. There was an inmate who had a book called A Ready Defense, which is basically a compilation of books by Josh McDowell. I think More Than a Carpenter and a few other books. I think the original version of Evidence That Demands a Verdict, they were all in there. But as time went on, then I was really convinced by the presuppositional argument that basically says without God, the God of the Bible, you can't prove anything. And then how that's hashed out, how God is a necessary precondition for the God of the Bible, not God in general, but the biblical God is a necessary precondition for intelligibility. For us to be able to make sense of the world, the foundation, this very starting point, has to be the God of Scripture. And I think those were the most compelling arguments for me that convinced me. Now, I had already believed when it came down to from an evidential perspective. I think there are some strong arguments to be made. But as far as what really solidified and strengthened my faith the most, it was a presuppositional argument. But let me know what really drove you to truly believe that Christianity is true.
Yeah, I would say keep digging. I mean, the fact that here's the interesting thing. Very few people go back. I mean, there are lots of debates about the Big Bang, but the fact he was going back to the moment of the creation in which we are living was actually very interesting. And I would tell him to keep moving forward and look at the different pieces, but he already seems to be doing that. I mean, the fact that he's juxtaposing the Big Bang against the resurrection, this idea that we came from nothing. One of the things, just to mention this, because I think it's important, when you're talking to atheists and agnostics, they will often say, oh, okay, great. Well, where did God come from then, right? It's sort of this, like, they think it's a checkmate argument. But the reality is, obviously, we have human minds and they're limited in how we think. And Rogan even said this. He said, we're born and we die. Maybe we're placing biological limitations on our understanding of the universe because we assume everything is created and dies.
Another good point. When we look at naturalism as opposed to a supernatural existence, it's like this. And this is one thing that I bring up when I'm having conversations with non-believers, is that you take, or one of many points I bring up. If you take something like your cell phone, this is, if someone told you that our cell phone, this was a product of time and chance over billions and billions of years, all these substances, the plastic, the metal, the glass, all of it, all the information in it came together over billions and billions of years. And now I'm using this cell phone. Would you believe it? And 10 out of 10 times I've ever asked any non-believer, professing non-believer, if they would believe that, they laughed. They would always laugh and say, no, I wouldn't believe that. And I'm like, well, why not? Or even if you don't believe this, let's just say any book that you have. Let's just say any book. If you don't want to go with the argument of the cell phone for whatever reason, let's just say any book you have that has words in it. If someone was to argue that this book came about over time and chance, as a result of time and chance acting on matter over millions or billions of years, would you believe it? The sentences, the punctuation, everything. The fact that you can make out these sentences into coherent words and paragraphs and chapters. And they always agree that it's nonsense. But yet here we have our bodies, or just anything living in nature especially, that is far more complex than the cell phone, far more complex than a book. Every cell that exists inside our body is far more complex than a book or a cell phone. But yet somehow we're under the impression that these things came about over chance happenings, as a result of chance, where there was no intention, no mind, no intelligence behind it. I honestly believe when the scripture says that professing to be wise, they became fools, or that the non-believer literally suppresses the truth in unrighteousness. I think that hits the nail on the head 100%, because no rational being would believe that such a high level of complexity would ever be able to be brought about without intelligence being behind it. I think we convince ourselves, and on top of it, here's another point. If you look at the cell phone or your computer or whatever, believing that the creation, that it created itself. No, it would have to be the cell phone comes together because an intelligent force acts that exists outside of the cell phone and creates it. I put a puzzle together. I'm not a part of the puzzle. I'm an intelligent individual to some degree, acting on the puzzle pieces and bringing them all together. So when it comes to the concept of naturalism, and the atheists, many of them want to laugh or mock it, or the concept of the supernatural as opposed to naturalism, a force that acts outside of nature, that creates. That is the biblical claim. I mean, at its very base, level, that is the biblical claim. That is not irrational. That is common sense. And I wish more people would honestly evaluate that argument or those arguments. And I'm making a very basic argument, but I wish more people would be honest about the reality and stop suppressing these truths.
God could have always just been there. But the point is, both sides have that argument, because where did this little thing come from that sparked everything? Where did all of that come from? Right?
Singularity.
If you're watching this, I might step on some toes here, Billy. If you're watching this, you believe in miracles. What do I mean by that? You either believe in the virgin birth of Jesus or the virgin birth of the entire universe or another religion. But my point being is this. The idea that everything came from nothing doesn't make logical sense. And so people will say, well, what about, dark energy or gravity? Dark energy and gravity, that's not nothing.
Right.
And so to me, you believe that that trillions of stars just blasted into existence from nothing. To me, that screams like a bigger miracle. People used to say, the old people, centuries ago, would look up at the night sky and see these dots in the sky and be like, well, there must be a God. But now that we have all this crazy technology and we can realize that there's billions of galaxies, trillions of stars, an unfathomable universe where we can't even begin to describe it, I don't know which one is a harder miracle to believe. So to me, I actually think the burden is on us now that we can see into the universe. It screams, to me at least, more of a creator than when we used to look up in the night sky and see dots in the sky. And I think that's scriptural. I want to leave you with one Bible verse. It comes from Ecclesiastes 3:11. And I think if you're watching this and you're struggling with your faith, I get it. I've been there. But I think you're closer to God than you realize. My buddy Joe, you're watching this, my man. God's after you, brother. And Ecclesiastes 3:11 says, among other things, but he says, he has also set eternity in the human heart. Man, whenever I try to run away or think myself out of belief, there's something in my heart that screams of eternity, because I think God put it in there. So, Billy, I'll give you the last word on this pretty amazing statement by Joe Rogan.
Yeah, it's the God-shaped hole that we hear a lot about, that we all have, and we're all trying to figure out how to fill that. And I think when you look at the universe, not only can something come from nothing, we know that that's not possible, but for it to be orderly, right? This idea that it would happen, the Big Bang, and then everything would be orderly and it would expand and we would be floating around on this planet as human beings with animals and trees and everything working in perfection. It's nonsensical. But I would just leave you with this. I would leave people with the idea that when an atheist or an agnostic says, well, where did God come from? The answer is, well, where did the materials to create the Big Bang come from? Both sides have the same problem. I think one side makes much more sense, the order and the intent that God created everything with. That is the side that actually has the facts on it, as you were stating, Raj. So we can leave it there today.
Yeah, I think obviously I agree. I think he made a sound case. I don't think it's a problem, the idea of an extremely powerful, all-knowing, intelligent being who exists outside of nature, interacting with time and creating time and space out of nothing. Supernatural, all-powerful being, as opposed to nothing being the creative force. I don't think that's an issue whatsoever on the part of the believer. But let me know what your thoughts are. Give me a comment down below or comment in the chat if you're watching this live. But good stuff right there. We're going to move on to the next section here, the next video, next conversation, because it's been a crazy week, to say the least. A lot of stuff has been going on. One of the big stories was what's been going on with Joe Biden. One of the big stories is what's been going on with Joe Biden. All of a sudden, after 5-6 years of people on the right, independents, pointing out Joe Biden's clear mental decline, lo and behold, all of a sudden, after the election, as always, the mainstream media now is talking about it. This seems to be a pretty common theme. Let me think about it. Russiagate, Trump being called a Russian asset, the Charlottesville very fine people hoax, the origins of COVID. What else? The Hunter Biden laptop. I could go on and on. All these things. Now we're adding the Joe Biden mental decline cover-up. All these issues that people like me were screaming about for years, talking about how there were clear signs back in 2019 and 2020, clear signs that Joe Biden was being hidden and that his mental faculties were clearly slowed. Now, I don't say this as a expert, as in, excuse me, I don't say this as an expert as if I'm some kind of psychiatrist or a physician. But when I was in the Army, I worked in a Army hospital, worked in the orthopedic unit for a while. And we had a lot of retirees, a lot of dependents who were there for broken hips, broken bones, things like that as they age. We know how that goes. But I dealt with a lot of people who were dealing with mental decline, dementia, various other ailments. And then you couple that with my 20 plus year law enforcement career. I may not be an expert, but I know mental, psychiatric, dementia. I know these issues when I see them. I may not be able to designate and tell you clearly what they're dealing with, but they have Alzheimer's. You have sundowners syndrome where people start to act weird and strange, older people in particular or typically when the sun goes down. And what I saw with Joe Biden, with the way he held his hands, his gait, the way he walked, how he would stare confusingly, oftentimes, all these things that were covered up by the media, I saw a long time ago. Oh, it definitely got progressively worse as time went on. But there was a concerted effort, and I'm going to share that with you as we go through this video, to cover all of that up, And you would have to be willfully blind to have not seen it. But I know people that argued with me and said that he was totally fine. Oh, well, what about Trump? You can't even compare the two. Like, honestly, for anyone to say that, you're just not being honest. You don't want to see it. But let's get into this clip here from the fire.
Well, they might want to buckle up because we're getting another brutal bombshell about the cover-up of former President Biden's mental decline. Privately, advisors debated whether a wheelchair would be required to get him through a second term. The president's doctor privately said that if he had another bad fall, a wheelchair might be necessary, and quipped that Biden's staff members were trying to kill him while he was trying to keep him alive. These revelations shouldn't come as a shock if you were watching The Five during the Biden presidency, and now one of the book's co-authors is using the L word to describe the White House.
Alex Thompson and I were on the case, as were lots of other reporters, trying to figure out what was going on behind the scenes. But the bottom line is the White House was lying, not only to the press, not only to the public, but they were lying to members of their own cabinet.
There are critics, however, that are pointing this out. The Tapper's record on the subject isn't exactly squeaky clean.
Check this out, y'all.
How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
It's very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable.
You are
to
no.
watch somebody on stage
It's so amazing. It's so amazing to me that the Washington Post just put out a piece examining how President Biden embraces his stutter, talking about it, while Trump mocks it, exaggerates it, belittles it.
He's sharp physically. I mean, mentally.
Yeah.
I think the question is physically, right?
He's 81, and his memory, it doesn't seem great. It's not horrible.
But that's not all, folks. Joe Biden apparently did not recognize George Clooney at their fundraiser and had to be told who he was by an aide. Now, that is an outrage, isn't it? Which apparently left the superstar shaken to his core. And that was the part that I thought was pretty funny. Like, imagine.
I know there's somebody out there. I would hope, or I would assume that somebody out there was under the impression that Joe Biden was fine. Or like maybe you convinced yourself of that, or maybe you honestly did not see any cognitive issues with Joe Biden. Hopefully I'm saying Joe Biden because I just got finished making a video talking about Joe Rogan. So, but if you did, if you honestly believe that Joe Biden was fine, now you have multiple, I think there are 3 so-called tell-all books talking about Joe Biden and the cover-up, so-called cover-up from the White House, blaming the White House. Even though the media, Jake Tapper, as the clip showed, he has a book out or coming out next week, I believe, where he's saying how the White House was covering this up. But you're supposed to be the media. You're supposed to be investigators. At no point did they ever, as far as I know, did anyone on CNN, definitely not MSNBC, or in other areas of the mainstream media throughout the last 4 years, ever acknowledge, and there might have been some that I missed. I'll acknowledge that. But as far as I know, there was never anybody who's made a clear point, unless there were a Republican who said that it's obvious that Joe Biden is showing some issues mentally. Anytime I ever saw anyone discuss this, especially any of the so-called journalists or newscasters, they were arguing in defense of Joe. And in the last year, I think the Wall Street Journal came out and did an article talking about it. Now they can acknowledge it, but you guys didn't see it, and you're blaming the media. How embarrassing is that? But for anybody out there who thought Joe was fine, what do you have to say now? I really want to know. Like, I'm thinking of one friend of mine in particular. He and I had a conversation just maybe a month or a few months ago, and he was saying that he may be a little slow, but Trump is no better. They're not even in the same ballpark. But yet everybody seemed to were alarmed and alerted post at the debate. But now all of a sudden, now they're all coming to now they want to be honest. Total BS, y'all, straight up.
Imagine you're George Clooney, Jesse, and somebody doesn't recognize you. Like when that happens to you, is it really upsetting?
It is.
How dare they? And then George Clooney said, all right, I'm going to write the op-ed that does him in.
Did him in. Barack, remember, told him to write the op-ed.
Yeah.
Clooney doesn't do anything.
That was Denzel Washington.
Denzel. He's the black actor, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So wheelchairs, there's nothing wrong with wheelchairs.
No.
I use them all the time at the airport. You don't even have to have a doctor's note. You could just say you're late and they'll wheel you around. You give them $20. It's fine. We were just talking about what we would have called Joe if he was in a wheelchair. Asleep at the wheel. You would have been.
Were talking about it.
Yes.
Yeah, it was just me, wasn't it? So I want to just talk to the people that don't watch us. How would I do that if they're watching us? But let me put it differently. Do you like to time travel? Do you like to see the future? Well, I have something in store for you. You can just watch Fox and you don't have to buy books from CNN. Okay? You'll know the future by watching us. That's how this goes. Now, Jake, this is what the media is doing. I wasn't a part of the cover-up. Ron Klain's like, no, it was Dr. Jill. Tapper's like, oh, no, we were trying real hard. It's everybody's pointing their finger. He's getting paid to write a book about what we said 4 years ago. And we had Rand Paul on last night. And Rand Paul was against tariffs. He was against the Muslim plane and the drug prices. And that's fine, because at this company, you can say whatever you want if it's your opinion. We don't have to toe the line here. Now, if you go back 4 years and someone had gone on CNN and said, Biden's brain dead, the lab leak, the laptop, they would have cut your mic and you would have been banished from CNN. Now, being banished from CNN is a badge of honor, but still, you can hear the truth here. If Joe Biden had done decently at that debate, cover-up still would have happened. There would have been no book. There would have been no book advance. We would not be hearing about this. They would just slapped him in a wheelchair on November 6th, and they would have said, see, he's just like FDR.
Which is why I rage over and over again, and I constantly harp on the fact that you cannot trust the mainstream media. They are shills for the Democratic Party. They have proved it time and time again. And if you don't believe me, just do a search through my YouTube channel or just stick around. Just stick around, because after this clip, I have another compilation to show you. Please stick around for it, because you do not want to miss it.
They're both in wheelchairs and they both defeated Nazis. What's more dangerous? Trump being president, or a secretive cabal of unelected officials controlling the president, using auto pen and overruling him, and then lying to the public about it?
Yep.
What's more unconstitutional? What's more corrupt? In a way, Trump saved democracy.
That's brilliant.
Brilliant,
and you can
even
say
for
whatever
me.
you want here.
That doesn't make it right.
One thing that really bothers me, Greg, is that still there's so many anonymous sources, but they're not anonymous because they're worried that Democrats will be mad at them. They're worried that they're going to be caught as liars.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That matters at this point. I love that they thought that he needed a wheelchair if he won. Apparently he wouldn't need one if he didn't win. No, they just didn't care. They didn't care about his health at all. They just worried about the optics, that he would need a wheelchair if he won. I am tired of these books. They should have watched The Five. They should have watched Fox. We were doing the reporting in real time, not right now. The books are now just an admission of guilt. The Dems can never bring up the 25th Amendment ever again. Even if Trump's brain is in a vat in the Oval Office running the country, we're going to say, oh, no, no, no. He's sharp as a tack.
I'm sorry, y'all. Just look at him. Just during these highlights or lowlights, just look at his face and just see how he is. That is clear dementia. Not here, sleeping. And I get that. He's not young. So I give him a pass on this. But his gaze, he just stares off with this blank stare. It looks confused over and over again so often.
Country, we're going to say, oh, no, no, no. He's sharp as a tack. But there's this other thing about the media's excuse, which is killing me.
Like a robot.
The White House was lying to us. Well, duh. Yeah, that's exactly to be expected. It's called spin. Your job is to assume that they're not telling you the truth. You're a journalist. You just don't go, oh, they say Joe's fine, nothing to see here. I mean, you should offer a little bit more resistance, than Facebook asking if you're 18. That's how bad it is. So it's not about the media. It's not about Joe's condition at all. Nobody cares at this point. It's the media's condition. There are two diagnoses. One, you're the dumbest, most incompetent generation of journalists ever on the planet. Or two, you deliberately covered up Joe's dramatic decline because you're biased.
And which one do you think it is? I have a tendency to go for the latter. They intentionally covered up Joe Biden's decline, his sad state, because they did not want to help Donald Trump win. There was even an article where at NPR, a longtime NPR journalist who said that they didn't want to air, I believe it was a shooting of Trump over and over again. They didn't want to go into it too much because they didn't want to help him win. Instead of being legitimate journalists, you ignore a story or don't report on it largely because you're worried about the political ramifications. Pretty pathetic.
That is all you have. There's no in between. I would say, if I were them, I would come clean and go, you know what? We knew Biden was a mess. It was obvious. But as Democrats, we preferred him over this existential threat known as Donald Trump. And they had called him Hitler, which meant anytime they criticized Biden, they would get grief for helping Hitler. So they couldn't actually be honest, or else that would be seen as somehow doing something horrible. But the media, Biden's still alive. The media is dead. Put a tag on their toe, call Quincy.
I'm about to tell.
Sorry about that.
And who's going to identify the body? Well, I have a suggestion. Chuck Schumer was asked about this, and we have a little sound. Watch it.
You said in June of last year, in my meetings with President Biden, I found him to be in command and impressive and wielding influence to make progress on key priorities. But in that same month, Biden apparently did not even recognize George Clooney at a fundraiser. Were you being straight with the American public?
Look, we're just looking forward.
Marie, is that going to cut it for Democrats? I know you want Democrats to win and be successful in the future. Will that help?
No. And I think because I want Democrats to win and because I think Donald Trump is an existential threat to many of the things we care about.
Big difference.
The fact that the people in the White House who agree with me on that, in the Biden White House, they believed this about Trump winning again. They knew how problematic that would be for so many of the things they have fought for. And yet in 2017 and 18, 19, 20, they saw they got him elected and then they saw the decline continue. And after the midterms, I've talked to lots of my friends who've worked in that White House. After the midterms, there was never a conversation about whether he should run again because Democrats overperformed, right? We did better than people thought we would. Biden took credit, and nobody had the courage in that White House to stand up to him and Jill Biden and say, if you run again, we will lose. And the fact that it got to the June of the election year, and that disastrous debate performance for him to be forced out. I mean, we had no chance at that point, right? Kamala, you can't run a campaign with no primary, being anointed in 100 days.
Yeah.
And I am the fact that George Clooney had more courage than every elected Democrat. They made fun of Dean Phillips, right? To say the things.
They didn't recognize him.
Well, but he didn't recognize.
Ultimate insult
It
in
sounds
Hollywood.
like he didn't recognize a lot of people that worked for him. The fact that he was the only one to say, I need to write a New York Times op-ed, and all these people, now they're coming out, most of them anonymously, which I agree is I don't like. David Plouffe, God bless him.
At least he's willing to be on the record.
At least
this
he's
is
willing
one
to be
of
on the
those
record.
points where George Clooney or a celebrity could actually say, do you know who I am?
You don't even know.
There's so much anger, and I like Joe Biden a lot. I don't like that his legacy will always be
It will always be this.
And his team did that to him.
Kate.
KT.
You're not my assistant, Kate. You're Katie. There are 200 Democratic insiders quoted in here. A lot of them are anonymous. Even their current spokespeople, they want to remain anonymous. They don't want anything to do with this.
Okay. They are still so afraid of just speaking the truth about what happened that they're not willing to come out on the record on this when everybody could see what was going on. Nobody was courageous. George Clooney wasn't courageous. Barack Obama wasn't courageous. Nancy Pelosi wasn't courageous. Democrats had a choice. They could have had a primary. And instead of having a primary, they were running around suing RFK Jr. and Dean Phillips, trying to keep them off of ballots. There was a choice here.
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
They also didn't want a primary because Biden and his team did not believe that Kamala Harris could win.
Well, after he dropped out. So they lost the opportunity on two primaries, on the front end and on the back end. They lost.
All right, real quick, let me show you this other video. This is the one I really wanted y'all to see right here.
And F you if you can't handle the truth.
This is a compilation of Democrats or mediaites, basically the same thing. This is a compilation of the media, the left-wing media, covering for Joe Biden. Take it away.
Now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden is the best Biden ever.
She knows so long as I was 9.
In fact, I think he's better than he's ever been.
President Biden has a photographic memory. His understanding and mastery of a complicated geopolitical situation, remarkable.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
Jackie, are you here? Where's Jackie? I didn't think she was going to be here.
I was sitting, 2 feet from him across the table, and he was, intense.
Have trouble walking sometimes? Yeah, so did FDR. He wanted GD war.
But he's totally focused. He's very sharp.
They say he's sharp in meetings and so on.
Very loose.
Oh, real quick, that section where he was asking about Jackie, where's Jackie? I think there was some type of media tribute to that woman, Jackie, who was dead. And he was asking about her, where she is.
Very well informed. Biden is state lead. He comes with
Totally focused. He's very sharp. They say he's sharp in meetings and so on. Very lucid, very well informed. Biden is state lead. He comes with gravitas. There hasn't been, as far as I know, a single claim that Biden made a mistake.
Ageism is an issue. Americans have a rich history of holding people's physical characteristics against them. Okay, you can ask African Americans.
He's older. That doesn't mean that he is unfit, and there's a lot of ageism there.
Now, this age attack, this obsession by the right, Joe Biden may not be able to speak for himself the way that he used to.
They want to think to take on government if we get out of line, which they're talking again about, and that's it.
Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth.
I keep going back here, y'all. What do you say? If you are a Democrat, what do you say when time after time, the media has demonstrated that they are liars? If you watch MSNBC, if you watch ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, if you watch these outlets, and yet they continue to lie to you, what does that say about you? Like, straight up, what does that say about you and your judgment? You trust people who are willfully dishonest to you, who willfully mislead you? I talked about it at the beginning of the show. The Charlottesville hoax, when claiming that Trump said there are good people on both sides, the Hunter Biden laptop, Russiagate, he was a Russian asset, the origins of COVID, the efficacy of the COVID vaccine, and now this, time and time again, these people lie. They make statements saying how this is a slam dunk. We have the facts, and they paint a picture, and they carry water and carry out lies. When did it stop? Or when does it stop? When do you get to the point to where you start asking yourself the question, well, what else are they lying to me about? That should cause you to just question how legit these people are or illegitimate they are. Honestly, because that's what happened to me. That's my story. Part of my story. Democrat for years, decades. Average black man in America. That's what I did. I supported the Democrat, carried the Democratic voter card that we all get at birth. And as time went on, once I started examining the Democratic Party's policies from the perspective of a biblical worldview, when I became a true born-again Christian, that's when the problems started beginning. I realized that my Christian faith, the biblical teachings did not align with their policies. And then I just started not trusting the media when I saw, in particularly the left-wing media, when I just saw the amount of lies that they told. I couldn't do it anymore. I'm just asking those out there who support the Democrats, who support these networks, just to challenge, just to have an honest time with yourself where you just sit down and you just start examining the evidence and don't let this stuff slide. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I'd love to know what you think. So make sure you comment down below. Now let's jump to the next video here where we will be discussing, let's see if I can get this up here. 1 second. We're going to. All right. Appreciate y'all being patient with me as I switch over to the next video. All right. Now here's another story that's been making headlines lately. How the FBI thwarts a terror attack in Michigan. Pretty crazy story, y'all. But again, there's been a lot of that going on, as I said in the outset. A lot of crazy stories going on.
Police and the FBI say they have stopped a planned terror attack at a Metro Detroit military base. The accused mastermind, a 19-year-old former member of the Michigan Army National Guard. Again, a lot developing here at this hour. Going to bring in Robin Murdoch with our Fox 2 Detroit team, joining us live with what we know and what is still left to figure out. Good morning, Robin.
Good morning, Josh. Yeah, what could have happened here is absolutely frightening. As you just mentioned, a 19-year-old Melvindale man is behind bars this morning for allegedly planning a terrorist attack at the TACOM military facility here in Warren, where we are right now. He apparently, according to court documents, had been planning this attack for about a year, and he was arrested on the day that he was supposed to carry this out. So he was arrested on Tuesday. 19-year-old Ammar Sayed had allegedly been talking to a couple of different undercover officers who were posing as ISIS supporters. Now, federal investigators say that he told them how to make Molotov cocktails, gave them ammunition, and even...
This right here is all you need to see. And my question is, had this guy... I know they said he was a member of the National Guard. I just wonder if he was indoctrinated from watching YouTube, or was he impacted by somebody who came across that wide open border that we had for 4 years? That's the question, or these are the questions that I'm asking.
Flew a drone over the military base here to help plot that attack. Again, Saeed was arrested on the very same day he was supposed to carry out this mass shooting. Now, neighbors, as you can imagine, they were just shocked when they saw the FBI raiding his home in Melvindale. The allegations are alarming and simply frightening. Take a listen to some of their thoughts.
I know it was totally scared when all the FBI, cars were there, and they wouldn't let us know what's going on. The father is a very, very nice man. And the son, I don't know, maybe one or twice I've seen him.
When has it ever been where someone was arrested for some heinous crime where the neighbors were like, oh yeah, he was pretty weird, or seemed like he was pretty evil? Almost every time that I can recall, people would say, oh, they were really nice, they were really friendly. You just never know what's living next to you or behind you.
Now, we are told that Saeed had actually visited the TACOM military base where we are right now during his time as a member of the Michigan Army National Guard. He does face a couple of different charges, and if convicted on them, he faces up to 20 years in prison for each of them. We are live in Warren this morning. I'm Robin Murdoch. I'll send it back to you.
All right, Robin Murdoch there with our Fox 2 Detroit team. We'll, of course, stay in touch and gather more details here. Thank you again for taking the time to be here.
Pretty wild, y'all. But again, you never know what's going on around you. You don't know who you're dealing with. In all honesty, you don't know who your neighbor is in most situations. So let me bring you to this last video. This one right here. Let me tell you, y'all. This is disturbing on many levels. This is a story that's been going around of this 7- and 9-year-old kid who were in a standoff with the police. Hold on, trying to pause this. This is a story of a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old who were in possession of a gun, who were in a standoff with the police. I don't know how long, but watching this disturbed me on so many levels. It made me angry at the parents, angry at the cops, because I felt like they should have been more decisive with their tone at times, but that's just me. But I get why they were trying to go the route that they did, trying to just convince these kids to comply. But after a while, you get to a point to where you realize that they're going to do what they want to do. And you have to do something. Check it out.
341, 131. We're going to be on the north side of the house. Yeah. Right. You guys? And 394 has the eyes with the drone. It is going to be.
You see in his hand, the little kid right here, the kid in the red and black. He's got looks like a small handgun, but it was a legit handgun, not a toy.
Just go ahead and drop that.
Put it down, babe. Go ahead and put it down for me, okay?
You're not in trouble, but you have to drop that and come talk to us, all right?
If there's a magazine inside the magazine well,
Put it down, baby.
they're playing with the gun back and forth. The one in the blue is trying to take it from the one in the orange.
Put it down, baby.
Just drop it, buddy.
Put it down, babe. You're okay. Put it down.
And
okay?
now the kid in the
We wanna
blue
put
and
all
green
these
has
away,
a
but we
firearm.
need you to put it down, baby.
Let's not do that, bud.
Because of the shield.
Let's not do that. Let's take our hand off, buddy. Let's put
Their ages are 7 and 9. So not total. The 7-year-old, you can kind of give him a little bit of a pass as far as maybe being influenced, but these kids are clearly in rebellion. It is so obvious. But you have to ask the question, who influenced them to do this? And when this clip is over, I'm going to take you to another article. So make sure you stick around where we go into a little bit more detail as to what's going on with these kids. Another article but another video primarily.
it on the ground. He said he has his hand on the trigger. Hey guys, put the gun down and come
394 has
talk
a
to
shield.
me.
If you do need one, someone else come back
Put the
for
gun
it.
down and come and talk to me. It's okay. You're not in trouble, buddy.
Just put it down, babe.
And we'll show you how.
I know. Can you put it down for me?
Just put it down.
You're not going to be in trouble, okay?
Just put it on the ground, bud. Come talk to us. You're not in trouble.
394, who has it?
Can you put it on the ground for me, bud?
The one in the blue.
One of the blue and the green.
It's going to be in his
It's gonna
left
be in
hand.
his left hand. He does have his finger on the trigger right now.
Hey.
Put it down.
Put it
Don't
down,
do
buddy.
that.
I'm not the unit. I'm going to
Put it down, baby.
Come on.
coming up to you guys.
Okay.
Eugene. Put it down, babe.
341.
Can you lift?
You want 40 on that side? If so, I would go ahead and 40 him.
Fuck, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, my lead porch north.
Just wait. Let's try to keep talking with them.
Wow. Watch the video coming up.
I know.
Eugene, put it down, babe, okay? Can you put it down for me so we can talk? Can you do that for me? Because you're doing a really good job right now. So if you could just put it down, I would appreciate that.
Which one's you doing?
He has the firearm right down now. He's no longer got his finger on the trigger.
I would go ahead and 40 him. Try to knock it out of his arm, and then we can move up.
Hold on. What I want you to do.
When they're talking about a 40 is a low lethal kind of like little launcher that shoots. Now they used to have like wooden dowels. They're almost like broomsticks, about the size of that are primarily impact weapons. They could penetrate if they're too close, but if used at the proper distance, they just hit like a mug. And that's what somebody on the radio was actually asking them to do, but the officers didn't want to do it yet. But let me ask you a question. When you were 7 years old or 9 years old, do you think you would have done something like this? Now, I don't know their mental faculties. I don't know if they're dealing with some type of mental issues or whatever, but I couldn't see myself doing any kind of nonsense like this at 7 or 9 years old.
What I do is I want you to hit beside them. Okay, hit the wall. I want you to hit the wall. Hey, put that. Just keep it down.
Sean.
Down. I want you to hit the wall. Hit the fence.
358's going to hit the wall with a 40.
Hey, you got to do what he says. I want you to hit this fence right here.
And we have tried speaking with these kids.
Sean, can you put it down, babe?
Hold on a second. Give it a second. Kiddos, just drop that. And come talk to us. You're not in trouble.
Yeah, that's simple. We've tried to talk them down. They're refusing to put the gun down.
If you can, ricochet it on the bottom of that wall into their feet.
Not
Maybe
with the
he'll
cannon.
listen.
If he puts the cannon down, will you put it down?
Okay? So just try not to hit him.
Put the gun down and we'll show you the cannon.
He's not going to shoot you, babe. Put it down. Okay, he's going to put it down now. He's facing it down. Now you put the gun down. Okay? Come on, Sean. Let's listen, okay, babe? We don't want to hurt you, honey. Can you put it on the floor? It's still going to be right by you, but if you put it down on the floor, then he could keep his cannon down. But put it on the floor.
Ready in 40? Just wait. Stand by.
The sooner you put that down, the sooner we can take you home. We can go see your mom.
Sean, this isn't a game no more. We're not playing a game right now. This is serious.
1030 speaking with 254.
I need you to put that down.
We want to help you, Sean. You tell me what you need after you put it down, and I'll make sure that we get you some whatever you need, okay?
We're just going to wait for a second.
Can you
just
do that for me? Well, your mom gave me your name backwards then. All right, then Eugene. Can you put it down for me? Now Sean has it. Sean, can you just toss it to the side, babe? Let's make this easy. Because we want to help you. We want to help you.
I want to try to do a warning, something.
Put it down, Sean. We don't want to hurt you, okay?
I just don't want to fucking.
Put it down, Sean.
I really don't want to fucking 48 kid right
We
now.
don't want to hurt you, and we want to help you, okay?
It'd be.
Put it down, baby.
40 going out. 40, 40, 40. Drop it! Drop.
Look at this. Did you see that? Again, I don't know this kid's mental state, but when they shot that low lethal round at him, his initial response was to pull the gun up and point it at them. Back it up a little bit.
40 going out. 40, 40, 40. Drop it! Drop it! Drop it, Sean! Load another one. Load another one. Drop it now! You're gonna get hit! Drop it!
You dropped the gun! Taser, taser, taser! Put your hands up! Close the gate! Put your hands up! Pull them up! Drop it!
Hey, hold on to that gun.
Drop it.
I don't even have the gun. I don't have the gun.
That officer was lucky that that kid didn't decide to shoot him. Let me rewind that part here, because he went up there while he was still in possession of the gun.
Drop it now. Drop it.
Look at this. All that kid had to do was point the gun up at him. That's all he had to do. And then what? I understand the compassion that these officers are trying to show, but you're talking about kids who are clearly not cooperating, uncooperative, in possession of a deadly weapon. Come to find out that there was a report that came out later saying that the kid actually tried to pull the trigger. The gun just jammed.
I don't have the gun. I don't have the gun.
Totally crazy. Let me read a little bit to you. Let me just read some of the details of this situation in the comment section here. Hopefully you can see it. There's not a whole lot. Let me know if you can see it. But this, I'm telling you, y'all, this one just drove me nuts on many levels. Matter of fact, let's just go to the other video. With the news article that goes into a little more detail. Hopefully that's up on the screen. No, here we go. All right.
Developing news. The sheriff says the 7-year-old behind startling video showing him play with a gun has run away and hasn't been found. Sheriff John Allen released.
So this is what's happened since this incident. They were, I don't know if they were taking a juvenile or just returned to their parents. I don't know what went down, but one of these kids has taken off. I don't know which one is the 7-year-old, just ran away from home. So there are clearly a lot of disturbing issues going on at this house.
More information tonight on our affiliate News Nation. BCSO drone video shows the kids ages 7 and 9 carelessly handling a loaded gun. Deputies confirmed tonight they are brothers, and a concerned neighbor called deputies back in February saying the kids were playing with a gun. The sheriff says one actually pulled the trigger, but the gun malfunctioned. The kids ignore the deputy's demand, so a deputy fires a non-lethal beanbag near them. Deputies then go in and take away the gun from them. The sheriff says tonight the 7-year-old is missing. Earlier, the department released.
Now, I get them wanting to protect these kids, their identity, but why would you even post this? Maybe the clothing they're trying to go by, but why? It's almost worthless to post this. No name, no face. I don't understand, like, trying to protect his identity when he's missing. How stupid is that?
Released a missing poster involving a 7-year-old. It states he may be on a purple scooter.
But we do know from some of the interviews that we have done, we know that the child was pulling the trigger. He was taught how to use a firearm by one of his parents. That's something that we're looking into.
The sheriff says they've been called more than 50 times to the home, and he's frustrated the state keeps returning the kids back to their mom. Their father is incarcerated. The sheriff says the mother didn't know there was a gun in the house, but he is looking to charge their father with Benny's Law for not having his gun properly stored.
So how long will it be before they decide to get these kids out of there? Like, what are they waiting for? Are they waiting for one of these kids to end up killing someone or someone to end up dead? Makes zero sense to me whatsoever. 0 cents. Yeah, release his name. I say also show his face, because we need to know what's going on. This kid needs to be protected. Whatever's happening in that house is to their detriment. Take them away. I know how hard it is to try to get kids removed. There were times when I was on patrol where I saw parents, I saw families, households that were in utter disarray, kids being treated like crap, no food in the refrigerator, kids dirty. And I called CPS, Child Protective Services, wanting them to take these kids away, but they refused, just flat out refused. Oh, it's a process. They really didn't want to do it. And I get that. But when do you get to the point to where you say enough's enough? Why did these kids, where did they run away from? Were they home and when they ran away? This is insane. And I keep saying it, but it was so frustrating to watch on many levels, because you have to stop those kids because they have a gun. And I'm not saying shoot them, but with a gun, but you have to stop them somehow, because that kid, his instinctual reaction wasn't to drop the gun once they shot the round at him, the low lethal. He pulled the gun up and tried to shoot it, but it didn't go off. Get these kids away, get them the help that they need so that they can hopefully become some level of a productive citizen at some point in their lives. But I'd love to know what you think. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate y'all, and I shall see you on the next show. God bless.